Your habits and rituals have a massive impact on the overall quality of your marriage. And today I want to talk to you about one habit in particular that I think has a particularly high positive payoff if you're willing to do it on a regular basis. It's a weekly marriage meeting. Some people call it the State of the Union. Some people call it a staff meeting. I call it a weekly marriage meeting. And regardless of what you call it, I believe there are 5 things that you should be talking about with your spouse on a weekly basis. And that's what we're going to talk about this week. All right, let's talk about a weekly marriage meeting. I believe that this is one of the most pivotal and impactful habits that you can have in your marriage for multiple reasons. The first of which, and I think this often gets overlooked, is that one of the unbreakable appointments or habits that you should have in your relationship is a regular date night. And what happens if you don't have a regular marriage meeting in addition to a regular date night is your date night turns into the marriage meeting. Your date night consists of talking to your partner about the children or your commitments or your schedule or the budget or things that are going wrong that you need to have a conversation about in your relationship. And it doesn't leave any space for flirting, for playfulness, for experiencing new things and really rediscovering your partner, which is the point of a date night. So my guess is if you're not having a weekly marriage meeting and you are having a date night, that your date night has actually been taken over by the things that you should be talking about in your marriage meeting, and you don't have a whole lot of space to do what you should and could be doing on a date night. That's the first reason. The second reason is that a weekly marriage meeting is going to help you build and maintain positive momentum in your relationship. It's an opportunity to, and we'll get more into the weeds here in a minute, but it's an opportunity to talk about the logistics, the things that are important, discuss any issues that you have in your relationship and get those resolved. And I think one of the big struggles that a lot of couples face is they don't have time to talk about the more strategic things in the relationship. They don't have time to talk about maybe some of the more difficult topics, maybe some conflicts that you had during the week, and therefore they never get around to resolving those issues. And the weekly marriage meeting is a great opportunity to start moving in that direction, where you have an opportunity every week to kind of have a State of the Union or a staff meeting, as some people call it, and discuss where things are and how you can make them better in the future. And I think that's really important. So with that being said, now that you have a little bit of context as to why the marriage meeting is important, I want to talk to you about 5 topics, 5 things that you could talk about in your weekly marriage meeting. And maybe this is something you want to build up to over time. The first one is something that everybody should be talking about on a weekly basis, hands down. If this is your first venture into a weekly marriage meeting, I want to encourage you to just start out with just this one thing, especially if you have a partner who is reactive, a partner who doesn't take feedback well, a partner who you notice is very defensive. You don't even need to go into the second, third, fourth, or fifth topics. Just stick with this number one topic, which is gratitude. And some of the things I want you to be thinking about as you approach this conversation is, how is your partner helpful this week? When did you see them at their very best? What are the big or small things that they did that impressed you or made your life easier? And as you ponder those questions, I want you to verbalize them to your partner. Tell them all the things that they did this week that impressed you. Tell them the moments where you caught them at being their best, where they alleviated stress or burden, where they were there for you when you needed them, and appreciate them. Reinforce that behavior. Tell them how much they mean to you. Once again, if you have a partner who is defensive, who resists having these hard conversations, a great way to start off is just by talking about how great of a person they are and all the positive things they do to contribute to your life and make it better. And as you do this over time, they're going to get accustomed to having these conversations, and they're going to become less afraid of the words, let's have a talk, or hey, let's have a weekly meeting. They're going to start looking forward to it because it's an opportunity to fill their love tank. It makes them feel appreciated and valued. It'll get them excited to participate a little bit more. The second thing that I want you to talk about is celebrations. This kind of falls in line with the gratitudes, but I want to be a little bit more specific because this is not just about what you appreciate, it's also about your wins that you've experienced this week. So some questions that you can contemplate as you're going through your celebrations are, what did you accomplish this week? Did you stick to your goals? Did you overcome a specific struggle? Did you experience a win outside of your marriage? This is an important conversation to have because I think sometimes we lose track of what's going on in our partner's life outside of what immediately has to do with our relationship between just you and your partner. It's easy to not really have a grasp on what's going on with their friends or with their family or their work life or their hobbies. And the topic of celebrations allows you to kind of get a window into the big and small victories that are going on in your partner's world. And that's a part of maintaining a friendship, and your friendship is the foundation of your relationship. Plus, it is fun to celebrate things. You should get used to celebrating things. You should find any excuse in your life to celebrate wins. It makes life more fun. It makes life more meaningful. And it's always great to be acknowledged for the good things that you have going on in your life. Helps you put on those rose-colored glasses, which research shows are actually the most accurate lens through which to view your life. The third topic I want you to talk about in your weekly marriage meeting is plans. We're getting into the logistics here. Some questions to contemplate when you're talking about your plans are: what calendar items do you have coming up? What are your big priorities over the next week or the next month? Put your date night on your calendar and talk about who's going to be in charge of planning the date. There's a lot of things that you can talk about here. You could squeeze in the budget if you wanted to talk about the budget. If you've got birthdays coming up, if you've got kids that need to get to practice, if you've got business trips, this is the time to talk about those types of logistics, making sure that your calendars are synced up, that you both know what your responsibilities are, and that you both have a handle and you've created some sort of agreement so that you can make sure that you can rely on one another and trust that your schedule will move forward smoothly and that you're not going to run into any hiccups that are going to cause you problems down the road. The fourth thing to talk about is, initially it can be the thing that you dislike the most, but for me, it's become the thing that I look forward to the most. And this is your improvements. Questions to think about when you're talking about improvements that you can make to your marriage are: what can I do better next week? I think when you're talking about improvements, it can be a real temptation to look backwards on the previous week and talk about all the things that went wrong. And while I think that there's some merit to that, you can get something out of it, I prefer to put my focus on the future, because you can actually control, or you have more control over what happens in the future. You can't go backwards in the past and fix things. So the way I like to frame this question, instead of what did I do poorly last week, it's what can I do better next week? And if that opens up the opportunity to talk about maybe some things that went wrong, that's great, but don't fret too much over what happened in the past. Instead, talk about what can be done in the future to make things better. One of the questions I love asking my wife is, could you rate me as a partner, as a husband, on a scale from 1 to 10? I know this gives a lot of people anxiety. They don't like to be rated or graded on their performance, but I believe the truth will set you free. And as I started asking my wife this question, at first it was painful to not be a 9 or a 10 every week. But when I was a 7, and I approached it from a space of curiosity, it was really interesting to learn what I was doing that wasn't maybe making myself an 8, a 9, or a 10 to my wife, and more importantly, what I wasn't doing. And then I got the opportunity to learn what I could do better in the coming weeks, like really specific, granular things that would have a really high impact on my wife. So if I was being unreliable, if I was being slow to respond, if I was spending too much time on my phone, if I wasn't following through on my commitments, those are all things that I want to know about. And though it can be hard to hear and make me feel a little bit defensive, the more I've leaned into it and asked that question from a genuine state of wanting to be the best version of myself and the best husband possible, the more I get excited about the honest feedback that I get from my wife, because then I can go implement those suggestions and make myself into an even better version of a husband. Another great question to contemplate as you're talking about improvements is, what did I do that hurt you? Or what did I do that made your life more difficult this week? This is an opportunity to start talking about conflicts and getting a clear vision into the impact that your mistakes, your shortcomings, your faults, your weaknesses have on your partner. I mean, the name of the show is Growth Marriage. And I believe that the purpose of your marriage is to help you grow. And you cannot grow unless you're willing to take a good, honest look at your weaknesses. And so being curious on a weekly basis of, hey, what am I doing that's bringing pain, discomfort, or unreliability into your life? I want to know so that I can be better for you. And the great thing about this is there's this law of reciprocity. And what normally happens when you start asking these hard questions and taking the honest feedback in a really positive and courageous way is your partner will start to respond in a similar way, and they will start asking these questions as well most of the time. Another great question is, what would make me a better partner for you next week? Or what outside commitments or demands or people are having a negative impact on our marriage right now? That's a really important one, I think. I don't think we oftentimes take into account the outside forces that are having a negative impact on our relationship. Sometimes we overcommit ourselves. Sometimes we overbook ourselves. We overstress ourselves. We say yes to too many things. And then it causes tension and stress and frustration and resentment inside of our marriage. And it's worth asking that question once every so often. What are the things that we've agreed to or that we've let into our life that are making it hard for us to connect and stay connected? And then you can do something about it. Another great question is there anything that we need to resolve from last week? This is a great opportunity to talk about arguments that you might have had or hurt feelings that you have and discuss those issues as well. And because I don't want to end on a negative note, I think that it's really important, regardless of whether or not you talk about improvements, to end with the fifth thing that I want to talk about, which is affection. I think every marriage meeting should end with a kiss, a passionate 6 seconds, 10-second kiss, maybe a nice long hug. If you can hug for 30 seconds or longer, it releases so many awesome positive endorphins. And that's a great way to end your marriage meeting on a positive note. So just to recap for you, the 5 things: start with gratitude. And then you want to talk about your celebrations. You want to talk about your plans and logistics, talk about the improvements that you can make in the future, and then end with some physical affection. And my hope is that this becomes a regular thing that you do. It doesn't need to take an hour or longer. If you do this on a regular basis, it shouldn't take more than 15 or 20 minutes, maybe 30, unless you had a rough week, and then it might take a little bit longer. But this is a habit that's going to keep you connected. I hope you can see how it will help you maintain or build positive momentum in your relationship. It'll help you stay focused on what's most important and not get distracted by negativity or arguments. It gives you an opportunity to resolve any issues that you have going on in your relationship and really kind of assess how things are going. And the hope is to help you stay connected. So as we're kicking off this year, I want you to make the commitment that you will have a weekly unbreakable marriage meeting. Remember, put it on your calendar, go over these 5 topics. If you're just getting into it, start with 1 topic or 2 topics. Leave the improvement section out for a little while until you get into the habit of it and create some positive momentum, and then start implementing the more difficult aspects of it. I hope that you find that useful. I think this is, once again, one of the most powerful tools that you can have inside your marriage. And I believe the most epic couples do this on a regular basis. And the people who are just coasting and have mediocre marriages, they don't. They're not this intentional. So if you want an epic marriage, this is one of the things that you can do. Thanks for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed it, I guarantee you will enjoy the episode that I did on the marriage scorecard. You can watch it right here. I'll link to it. And it is an episode about a tool that I created for myself because I realized I was not being the type of partner that I knew I could be. And so I created a tool to help me track the behaviors that really mattered inside my marriage to make sure that I was actually being the type of husband that I wanted to be instead of just having really good intentions. So be sure to check out that video. And if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button for more videos to help you strengthen your marriage. That's what we're all about here. Have an awesome day and hope you check out these other resources.